In this video, I'm going to discuss with you my 10 to 11 learnings I've had from shooting for 2 years in my small town. So if you're living in a small town, doesn't matter where in the world, leave a comment below. Street photography, everyday photography, or travel photography. What do you think of? Street photography, New York, Paris, London, Tokyo. It doesn't matter where, it's always these big metropolitan areas. And I used to go for photography to the closest ones I have, which is Antwerp, Rotterdam, Brussels, Düsseldorf. But at a certain stage during Corona, we didn't have that option. So I started wandering around through my own town, which I always classify as boring. And I'm pretty wrong about that one. Yeah, so that's the first thing that I've learned, is the fact that I at least didn't appreciate it, because it's known. We all know what it is in a small town. Everybody knows each other. The routines seem to be set. I've learned that that's absolutely not the case. Yeah, so the first thing that I really needed to do was leave my comfort zone. And this sounds strange, because if you're living in a small town, you know what I mean, right? Things are set in its own ways. You know the people, you have your history, the little networks, you know the big events. And for the rest, it's boring, right? It's always the bright lights of the big city which seem to be more interesting. And I've learned it's actually the opposite. And that's also what I'm going to share later on. So that's one of my big things. I had to leave my comfort zone, be a little bit more open, and check out what's actually happening in my town. And I found out it's far from boring. And that's my other point. Instead of being the insider, I forced myself to become the observer, the outsider. And over the last 12 months, I've noticed that I became from like a kind of observer, outsider, I became an observer and more of an insider. Let me know if you have that same feeling. The more you delve into something in this small town of mine, or your small town, the more you start finding out. And I found that really, really good for my photography. You know, and this episode is not about gear. Yeah, whether you do it on your mobile phone or like me on cameras. I always prefer normal cameras. And for video nowadays, I really prefer mobile phones. Let me know what you think. But anyways, regardless of what you have, basically documenting what happens in your own small town or in my small town. Gear doesn't matter that much. If you're walking around with a camera, what I did find out is if you're walking around with a big bulky Sony A7 III, where I'm shooting on right now, with a bigger lens on it, people immediately notice you. And that's the other part. Always bring your camera. That's one of the things that I really learned. I missed a lot of shots in the first couple of months because I didn't have my camera with me. And with my phone, I don't even think of taking a shot. Always bring a camera. I've got 2 nice little bags for it. It's not too big. People see you walking around with it. And even now, like 9-10 months later, I can feel that if I'm not wearing one of my camera bags, and they're comfortable ones, not too expensive either, something is missing. Something is just missing. And that's one of the things that I'm like, damn it, I forgot my camera bag. Or, why did I pick this lens? You know, those kind of things you get. But then you shoot with what you have, you know. It's not about, you know, winning a Pulitzer Prize. It's more about capturing the essence. And that's one of the things. The essence of every town, small town, is normally in a culture. Yeah, so if I see a lot of viewers here on the channel are either from the US, India, or the UK, well, what you have is a unique local footprint, identity. And because I grew up in it, I don't always see it. But now with my camera, you suddenly start to realize, you know, Carnival here is a big thing. 5 days of Carnival, everybody, there's kind of a local theme. The villages get renamed, you know, and people go out for 5 days. It's 5 days of drinking, partying. It's for the kids. Kids not drinking, obviously, but it's great to document it. I actually ended up in a church on Sunday morning for the Carnival's Mass. I've never had such a delightful time in my life in a church, and I wouldn't have known if my aunt hadn't asked if I would like to take pictures, because she's in a choir, right? So this is the mouth to mouth, but also for public events, and that's a big problem, is it's the best opportunity you have. But here from my hometown, most of it is all spread out over I don't know how many different Facebook groups and whatever. So it's normally the local tourism board where most of the people who organize events post what's going on. And it's every weekend. I'm surprised how much is going on. So I had to kind of be persistent, and that's my next point, in pursuing, following up, going places, sometimes not taking a good picture, but then a year later you think, oh yeah, that was there, that was cool. And that's, I kind of think, is the essence. And there's also one thing I've learned, is that people, at least in my town, sometimes react like crazy people. I was, you know, an example is I was shooting a flower of some sort and took the picture, walked away, middle of the day, nothing going on in somebody's garden. And suddenly behind me I hear a guy screaming, and he came out like, you know, steam out of his ears. He thought it was some kind of criminal who was photographing his house to break and enter. And I just showed him the picture and said, look, what's your issue? And he immediately calmed down and walked away, still steam coming out of his ears. I've also had shopkeepers and why are you filming me? I'm not filming you, I'm just taking a picture of what's in your store, what's your issue? These kind of things you have. So then bringing a card and showing it so they can go here to the YouTube channel or to my website, which you see here below, helps a lot to diffuse and also to get people's attention. Yeah, and as I was going along with my camera, I got invited a death metal concert or death metal event days. We have public music here every Wednesday in the summer. It's now organized by somebody I know. So you get a lot of other opportunities. And for me, photography is not to make money. The same as YouTube. I couldn't care less about it. It's my hobby. It's what relaxes me. What keeps me kind of going. So suddenly getting these invitations and being there present, it also changes a bit on how you experience certain things. So I really enjoy that part of it. And it really becomes like, wow, my town has so much to offer. And yet people don't always know about it or simply refuse to experience it. So that's the comfort zone again. Now, some of the ideas or some of the things that I really was surprised about. First of all, my town, not a typical Dutch town with a canal and, you know, the typical Amsterdam stuff. We have more Belgian architecture because we're really close to the Belgian border. And that's a fantastic opportunity because I got to photograph quite a few things from the outside buildings. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. I never noticed it before. And then there is nature surrounded by forests. There's a lot to do. You can do macro, whatever, yeah. It's not always small town, doesn't always have to be street photography. You can do whatever you want to. Yeah, but there's so much there. Then there's portraits, yeah, certain habits, emotions. We have car shows here as well. We have so much beach volleyball, you name it. There's always something to do. Yeah, and it's really, I'm so happy that I did this for a year and I'm going to continue this because it's also part of documenting my life. That's the reason why I'm a photographer. So if I pass away, knock wood here, in 20 or 30 years time, there's an active library of images, of timestamps, which I took for the ones in my family. So they can see what I saw at the time or share or, you know, dig up some memories we actually made together. That's one of the reasons why I really enjoy this project. And, you know, still, sure, I go occasionally to a big city and yes, it's great, the dynamic and the bustle, but I always feel like the outsider. And on one hand, that's great, but on the other hand, you miss a lot because if you're an observer and you become the insider, what I'm now finding out, oh man, it's fantastic.